Hello, welcome to Tech Days Online. No, wait, hang on. It's not that, is it, Andrew? Where it's the global online Azure bootcamp we're doing this time. I am, as I always have been, Rik Hepworth, and we've decided to turn the tables today. With me is the masterful Andrew Fryer. But Andrew, since you've met him last, has changed roles. He's no longer the mad maniacal evangelist of old. Andrew now actually works for a living. So, Andrew, why don't we start by you letting people know what your new role is and telling us what you now do within Microsoft?
Rik, great to be working with you again, and welcome everybody. I am an engineer, nothing more than that. Software engineer working for Microsoft. That's what it says on the contract. That's what I do. Aligned to industry, specifically in my case, Her Majesty's Government here in the UK. As you can imagine, we're kind of crazy busy at the moment. And actually, we've been able to continue to be busy because obviously we've got some toys that we can play with. And I'm talking to you from darkest Surrey. Well, my good friend Rik, I guess you're up in darkest Leeds, aren't you?
Well, I don't like to think of God's own county as dark, mate, but yes, I am in the great county of Yorkshire, and whilst you can't see behind me because of the screen, it is gloriously sunny outside, and I'm trapped in here with you. But actually, I think that's really what we wanted to talk about today. I mean, we normally sit on the couch and we yabber on about cloud technologies and Azure services and how we can combine those, right, and build beautiful constructed applications for our customers. But actually, COVID and the lockdown has really changed a lot of things for us. And I'm more interested in how the cloud is an enabler for remote working and remote engagement with customers. And you've been part of a remote team for quite a long time. You're working with customers remotely. And what I'd really like you to do is chat with me for a while. Tell me how that team would normally work remotely and what, if anything, has changed with the global lockdown and how have you had to adapt to that?
Well, break that down first of all by saying the group that I'm in is about 800 people scattered across the planet. And although I'm in a government team, I work with UK government because I'm British and I have some security clearance. My colleagues in America work on American government projects. My buddy Chavit in Istanbul is working with the European Union and NATO, and my buddy Randy in New York works with the United Nations. So we're talking global government, literally in this case. So you can imagine the phone has started to ring off the hook. But also it has meant sometimes it's business as usual because we're used to having what we call our all hands, our teams meetings, when we usually run two of them for two different time zones. And then that's how we stay in touch with each other because we are in different places. We used to get together once a year, and already that event, even for 2021, is now going to be virtual. So we're kind of used to this anyway, so it doesn't feel that different in some ways. However, we were always going to go and leave our house and go and talk to our customers. And this is where the rubber hits the road, because obviously our culture is very different from the culture of the organizations we work with, especially when you start mentioning government bodies, and their patterns and practices are quite different. And it's interesting to see how some of those have embraced that and some of them not so much, and it's killing them. And I'm not going to name names here. That's not the subject of this. I want to talk about the good stuff anyway and not the bad stuff. So we've got a number of tools in our armory. We're actually currently talking on something called Teams, and you may well have heard of that. And it works and gives us a basic capability. But it's the use of that technology that matters. The fact that it does this and it can do that, if you're not using it, doesn't really matter. And then obviously we write software. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to fire up, well, our two key weapons amongst our weapons are the Azure DevOps, where we obviously are doing our continuous integration, continuous development, if that's what our customers are using. If they're using the Atlassian stack, then we'll absolutely use that. We are definitely going to be using Azure, though, because we're Azure cloud engineers, so we only ever work on Azure. And then the second piece of the puzzle, obviously, sometimes is VS Code, although there are disconnected ways of doing that. You can just create a jump box and install stuff on there, because people might have gone home and their laptops are locked down. So they can't install stuff. Well, there's Cloud Shell, there's the Azure portal, and you can go and get stuff done there. And although VS Code, for example, has got code sharing, and sometimes we use that, but we've also got Teams. So we'll do our stand-ups and our retrospectives and all our agile ceremonies on this with our customers. And in fact, I was on backlog grooming this morning, and retrospectives, and we're using the tools so we can vote on what we think, and it's actually quite good doing it remotely because you can't see what other people are doing. And then we can say, yeah, this went well, that didn't work well. And actually that comes really home to the way we run meetings. You know, an hour-long meeting in a room is pretty boring, but doing it online, so we're going to keep this to maybe 15, 20 minutes because that's enough now. I can't concentrate that well when we're not connected. Going on quite a lot of different bits and pieces here. Rick, have you got some sort of specific questions that I can feel that occur to you after that rant?
Well, so I mean, obviously, we work in the tech industry. At Black Marble, one day we were in the office, one day we weren't. We didn't find it terribly difficult to pivot our development. Obviously, people can RDP from home. We got people with laptops. We'd already established a certain pattern for access. What we found actually is that we're now challenging our customers because engagements that were previously on-prem, you know, I would travel to a customer site, run a workshop on a customer site. We'd run hackathons on customer sites. Now we're trying to find ways of doing that online with technology, but in a way that doesn't involve me trying to go to an office that I'm not allowed into anymore and standing up a lot of physical tin and infrastructure to support. And I was really curious because obviously in some regards, you've been doing that with your customers for a little while. And I wondered if you got tips and tricks that could help partly me and how I advise my customers and partly my customers to say, well, you know, these are the things that you could do. This is a good way of working remotely. Here are the pain points you're going to hit, you know, that kind of thing.
So I think the first thing to think about is what is different, even for us. The first thing that's different for us is that we're at home a lot more. And our kids and our family members at home, maybe our elderly parents. I've got a lot of elderly neighbours, so I will shoot out and do shopping for them. So they're not going to stand in the shopping queue or get that done. I'm at the point of the demographic where we can kind of blag our way in on the early 1 hour thing when it was really tough, but now it's easier. So I have to sometimes take time out of my day to do stuff. So when you're in a team that's in different locations all spread across the place, it's really important to understand when can you get together when you're off grid. So the first really simple thing is the presence on tools like Teams. Am I available for a chat? If I'm green, talk to me. If I'm red, I'm busy. Hopefully I'm red at the moment. Nobody's going to ping me. Do not disturb. Appear away, what have you. Use the presence and get brutal with that. The second thing is to come together as a virtual team and work out when is a good time to get together. So, you know, we want everybody Tuesday, 10 to 11, you know, we're going to do our stand-ups. And obviously, Agile ceremony is not Monday to Friday. That never works. Nobody ever gets stuff done on a Friday. Hell, I don't even work on a Friday if I ever did. But what I would say is that we have those meetings that you absolutely need to be at. Otherwise, it's just a question of working through your backlog, working through your tasks. I've got stuff done. Hey, I can go and do my yoga or whatever it is that I do in my spare time to remain sane now we're at home. So I think those are a couple of like actionable things. It's meeting etiquette, super important. We've got the cameras on at the moment, so our lovely public can see us. Clearly Teams has got a limitation compared with some other tools when that comes to that. But having a little water cooler conversation before the meeting starts while people drop in, turn the cameras on, then maybe turn them off because little Johnny has got his Spanish tutorial. We need the bandwidth while he talks to his teacher because he's at home studying. So it's things like that, you know, practical magic, thinking that through. And I think nowhere is that more important. Is this a top down of managers, like you've got a team that you manage, Rick. I'm not allowed to manage anybody. You can understand why after listening to this. But the important thing is that you have permission from your manager because he's exhibiting those same behaviours. So my manager, Rob, sitting in his back garden with a mug of coffee and his Labrador trying to drink out of it, creates a sort of social frisson. It gives us a connection, it builds trust, which is what this is all about. So then we have the more formal meeting and then we have a bit of a laugh afterwards and we keep in touch and we reach out. So those are some of the things that we do. Hopefully that's been helpful.
So have you found anything that actually you can't do, that there isn't a replacement for either face-to-face or going into the office?
So we did get caught out recently. I mean, I think, we learn from our mistakes and doing, not doing. If we were on site at a large customer and there is something in the wind, you know, management have made a big decision to change direction on something, you're probably going to be more alive to that if you're on premises than you're on meetings like this. So on a recent project, that's kind of caught us out a little bit. No reflection on our team or indeed the customer we've been working with in this. just stuff happens. They've had to do a bit of a reset on that, and that has proved to be difficult. Obviously, my team are international, so my day I'm tending to check online early in the morning, see what's going on, do some stuff outside maybe, and then in the evenings I've got to stand up at 5:30 this evening or go on for a couple of hours, and we're going to go through some backlog grooming and stuff with my buddy Alex, who's in Seattle, and we're going to get some stuff done then. So it's having permission to flex your day, and we've already talked about flexible working and 4-day weeks as a result of that. This is bringing all of that home and showing you that what really matters in life is getting stuff done, not attendance.
So I think we've been deluged. Certainly, I've been deluged with emails saying, hey, we can help you stand up Windows Virtual Desktop, which is the best gateway to get your team working remotely. And with my technology hat on, yes, I think that's a very valid way to stand up very quickly remote access to applications for an organization that maybe wasn't already in that space already. They had a lot of on-premises stuff. They weren't geared up for remote working. I do have a bit of a concern, though, with my cloud governance, my giving best advice hat on, that organizations might find that there is a bit of a runaway impact of this, a downside, if you like, to the cloud, that suddenly we find we've got a lot of stuff that's running that we didn't want to turn off, that we've put solutions in that turn into long running ones. When you're working with customers, when you're helping them manage cloud services and cloud software, and it's not just Azure, is it? It's Office 365, it's Dynamics 365, it's the whole estate. How do you help them try and do that responsibly and put in appropriate constraints and governance, which I think is something that's quite important now to avoid the car crash later?
Yeah, so I wouldn't claim that our team are the world experts on something like Databricks or Cosmos or any of our other exotic systems. We're sure we absolutely do all those works. What we're known for is engineering excellence. And what that gives you is, first of all, the whole CI/CD, continuous integration, continuous deployment pipeline. And secondly, all the monitoring and testing and oversight that goes with a proper project. And I don't care how much of a hurry you're in, all of that makes really, really sound sense. If you're standing up that infrastructure, you're going to do it as a script. It's nearly as quick to do it with a script these days with the pipelines and the tooling, whether you're using ARM or Terraform or whatever your deployment thing of choice is. You're doing it that way so you can stand stuff up. The billing and the monitoring that comes from public cloud does give you a check that you're going to sign off against. And you may have seen on various press that we've hit capacity limits to certain places. You can imagine that we're clearly going to prioritize who's important or not. But I don't quite see how the VDI solution would play anyway, because it's the applications that are sitting in the office and the clients of those, whether they're client server or whatever they are nowadays, that you need. I mean, running Office, you can run Office anywhere. I can use my corporate account on my own device. And I think bring your own device that we used to talk about with our good friend Simon is very important. And perhaps the chat's recording this are using their own personal gear because their mega meaty server is still sitting in the office that they can't go to anymore. So you're making do with what you've got. And sometimes it's more important to get the work done than actually dot the I's and cross the T's. I get you. But equally, having really good processes in place and tracking and documenting what you're doing. Perhaps the most important document I ever worked on in ADO is all the markdown for the wiki about how we arrived at our design decisions, what we did and how it all works. So if I do have to self-isolate or I get really ill, because let's face it, I'm older than Boris Johnson, I am not the point of failure. So that's the other reason you want to code all this stuff down and pair code so that we've got some resilience in there. My sister's office, if they have to go in because she's an emergency, whatever the key worker is, they actually sit, because the office is largely empty, each team sits in its own space. They don't use the same space as the other team on alternate weeks. So there's all sorts of management practices going on there. But I think making considered choices, there's no substitute for that. Just don't rush the bull at the gate. Another couple of days isn't going to matter. As we talk today, when I don't know when this is going out, we're in for another 3 weeks of this. So what is it we need to get done in the next 3 weeks, and which of the applications really matter? What is the key business? And really being laser focused on that is sound engineering.
Certainly I've started to have conversations with organizations for whom remote working really wasn't the norm. who've now started to think, well, actually, this might work for us. We can see some good stuff in this. If you were one of them, if I was an organization that had very quickly stood up things to try and remote work, that sort of emergency response, have you got any advice for how I should try and then transition what I've stood up as a tactical solution now into something that's much more of a strategic solution as we come out of the craziness, please God, in several weeks' time?
Well, indeed, but then sometimes some of these systems are going to have legs afterwards. So I think you're absolutely right. So the quick and dirty, okay, we absolutely want online collaboration. What is it we need from online collaboration that's unique to our business? So, and let me give you a really good example of online collaboration that I saw in the press, nothing to do with Microsoft. I just saw it today, virtual parliament. Okay, what are they going to need? How is it going to work? And so on and so forth, all right? Because it's on the BBC that they're talking about virtual parliament. Well, how is that going to work? What are the mechanics there? Following all the processes. If you're going to run a courtroom or you're going to run something mission critical like that, you're going to think about that stuff. If you're in the I don't know, the travel or the catering business, you're moving from a restaurant to a takeaway business. If you're and travel agents, can work for home and advise us, as indeed they were doing before this happened. The travel company we use do that for us anyway. If you actually have to call them, then they're excellent. Then you're usually talking to somebody who's working home. So what is it you actually need out of these technologies? It always comes back to what features you need, what are the user stories. And I hate to keep bashing the Agile manifesto here, but what is it we actually need to do? So, for example, we're recording this at the moment. Indeed, that's the whole point of us having this chat, because we probably know each other's opinions on any given subject because we've known each other for so long. But is that important to you? And if it is important to you, would you like a transcript of that? Would you like that transcript translated into other languages? Yes, Teams can do that. Maybe other technologies can as well. I'm not an expert. Do I want to be able to share my screen? Do I want to be able to, how many people do I want to talk to? How many people are going to be in a meeting? Who's going to speak? Is it other people just listening? Let's just, like any other piece of engineering, let's just actually think about what is it we actually need and what's nice to have, must have, should have, could have, would have. Don't throw all that stuff away is what I'm saying. And you know what? Obviously, we are experimenting, and you're aware of some features that become really useful. People forget, for example, about presence up on the top right-hand corner of the screen, and I can put my hand up here, and hopefully you can see that. And obviously
we keep having this conversation. You're in the shiny Microsoft tenant. I don't get any of this stuff. I get custom backgrounds, but that's it. I'm waiting patiently for 9 people and meeting. But actually, that's a good point, though, isn't it? That it's a testament to modern development practices and modern technology organizations that the Teams development team pivoted so quickly with work that admittedly was already, on the backlog. Some of it was in progress. Now they're pushing it out because there's a tacit benefit. And I think the one thing that certainly I feel as a software company is it's nice all of a sudden that actually there are things that we're doing that you can go, what, I'm actually making a difference in a small way. I'm making other people's lives easier.
Absolutely, yeah. And Teams is an ecosystem you can plug stuff into. So that sometimes we do, and obviously there are bots and other bits and pieces we can throw in here. We can integrate with Teams Teams integrating with Teams. That's stupid. Teams can integrate with, for example, Azure DevOps, so you can see all those boards and what have you. We've got whiteboarding capabilities for teaching. We've got translation, all sorts of other odds and ends in there. And it's a bit social and it's a bit of fun. So it can be serious or work depending on what you want to do. But I think the really key message of Teams is, didn't it scale well? We had no idea the demand we were going to be hit with. And yes, you could say we're running out of capacity or it's a little slow on any given day. But what system could survive, tenfold increase in requirements? You saw how the supermarkets failed when people were buying 10 times as much food as they needed to, or paracetamol or whatever else it is that we're running low on. Clearly, systems can't cope that well with it. The cloud didn't completely break as a result of that. We had to pivot, and we're still working through that. But it's that scale we always talked about. It's that hyper scale. We can just do this. We can educate the world. We can care for the world. We can, if we'd gone back in time, we could maybe put a few of these screens into intensive care units, and so that loved ones can communicate with their relatives and friends without contamination and so on and so forth. And equally, healthcare workers can see how people are doing without getting up close to them. There's no substitute to human contact. Having spent, a couple of months in hospital, I can attest to that. And the 10 days in ICU, definitely will. It is really good. It just shows that some of the stuff we've been talking about for me for the last 10 years absolutely stands up and hunts.
Yeah, and I think that really sticks in my mind, that if this was 10 years ago, I mean, there's all kinds of sort of flippant stuff on social media. If this was 10 years ago, he would be your Nokia phone and that kind of stuff. Yeah. Actually, we couldn't have done this 10 years ago, right? I could not have switched my company from being in person in a building to being remote and working over the cloud without the cloud capability we have now. We couldn't give ourselves more capacity in our own machine rooms. And I think that's kind of important. And I'm seeing a lot of low code, no code solutions as well that again, we couldn't do that 10 years ago, but now I can take Office and Teams and I can integrate that with functions and what was Flow, which is now Power Automate, Logic Apps, and build systems very quickly to get my team up and running and working again.
Yeah. I think the other thing as well is downtime. If you are a worker where you can't go in as well, the massive revolution that's happened in the last few years has been the massive online courses, like the event we're running here. So you can dial in, tune in and skill up whatever it is, be it, Kerry teaching me how to do yoga this evening, or, you're going to sharpen your Python skills or learn more about Agile on whatever learning platform you want to use. So that's really, really useful as well.
All right. So shockingly enough, Claire, who asked us to do this session, gave us 20 minutes, and we're just about at time. As we wrap up, I just want to say, well, are there any sort of, if there was one thing you could say to people to make their lives better and easier in terms of helping their company function while they're working remote, what would it be?
I think it is follow me. If your senior management, whichever organisation, are embracing this technology, it will cascade down. But sometimes the bottom-up approach isn't going to work here. So having your board meetings, your reviews, your all of that goodness, and setting a good example, and then HR, rather than being the blocker in this, coming along and showing people how to use this technology, maybe giving people counselling, reconnecting, making sure they're all okay, would be a really, really good way of doing that. And you can see who the companies are that you want to maintain a relationship as we come out of this by those very behaviours. You're going to remember the guys that gave the nurses a free meal or what have you, or sent you a letter, not the usual spam, that you were talking about earlier about how can I help your company, with a very obvious agenda, but just people doing stuff because it's the right thing to do for the public good. To pro bono publico. I will leave you with that thought.
I agree with that. I mean, for me, the one thing that sticks in my mind is remembering that we're not just trying to run a business, right? We're trying to support the people that work for us and support the people that we're working with. So that social aspect of remote working, the water cooler teams channel, the after hours party that's enabled by all the different online things like Teams, like other solutions that are available. That's the important one for me. Yeah. All right. Well, Andrew, it's been great talking to you after so long. It's a shame we're not on the same couch, and neither of us are going to get bombarded by Channel 9 guys, but it's been a pleasure. Thank you very much for joining us for 20 minutes. And thank you to you, the viewers online and around the world. And I hope you're having a great time engaging with the content of the global Azure event that's currently running. Thanks very much.
Toodaloo, folks.